Welcome back. As I promised, we have first panel that will be discussing topics that are very imminent, the topics that are related to the next few months. And I will introduce panelists first. The first panelist I will introduce is Andrii Nemyrovskyi. Thank you for coming from Ukraine. Andrii is a member of the management board and PC UKRENERGO for more than 6 years. Another panelist is Pavel Vágner. Pavel is working for ČEPS for 22 years. You must have started when you were 10 working for ČEPS.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Long time. David Kučera, CEO of Power Exchange Center Europe, more than 15 years in the institution. Maciej Jakubik, EU Affairs and Strategic Communication expert from PSE, Poland. And online we have Dovhun, CEO of SEPS. Welcome. Welcome, gentlemen. The very first question, Andrii. What is the difference in managing the grid prior to the war and during the war? Describe the situation in Ukraine just now.
Thank you for your question. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Nowadays, it's very important to be open for discussion. For the last 6 months, for me personally, I believe it's the first time that we have found the time to have the discussion. So answering your question, it's absolutely different situation. And for Ukrainian energy system, it's twicely different because the Russian Federation started the war in 3 hours after our system was desynchronized from Russian Federation and Belarus. So we became into isolated mode. And there was a lot of the skepticism about these tests, about isolated mode tests. But, and it was multiplied by the rocket attacks to our power system, to our substations, to our lines, to our thermal power station, etc., etc. But energy system proven its stability actually, and we were in isolated mode 3 weeks instead of 3 days. And it's absolutely was new challenge and new experience for our dispatchers. Also, it is also not less important that maintenance of the grid under attacks, under military and the bombs explosive along the lines. Our maintenance teams are actually heroes, and in minutes after the military says, okay, it's quite safe to start maintenance and repair maintenance of the lines, we started. So we developed new absolutely scheme of how the brigades are coming to the lines in line with the military support. It was absolutely difficult to find enough of the spare parts, and it also was something important. There was a support from our colleagues, from our neighbors, TSO. Also would like to thank you. Thanks to them for this support, and it's still we receiving it. But as for we synchronize since 16th of March, we synchronized with Nemyrovskyi, it became quite smoothly actually. It's good that we still have enough of automatic reserves. We still have enough of manual reserves, secondary reserves, and now the situation is more than stable. Of course, each day there could something new happen. I believe everybody knows as for the situation Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Now it's on the zero production, but we hope that everything get back to the better. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you. I will ask similar questions to other TSOs, ČEPS, PSE, and SEPS, and I will start with Petr. Do you feel in Slovakia that there is a war in Ukraine? Is there a difference in the way you manage the grid?
If I want to actually answer your question fully, I would actually split it into areas. The business as usual and the operation of the system. Of course, it provides a bit of more intensity to our team to watch what's happening in not only in our system, but within the entire European one. So yes, there is a difference between now and the February this year. However, the question might be addressed broader, and it means, if you look at the level of the consumption and the load of the system and what's happening on the market with the prices of the electricity, declining demand, and again, yes, we see a difference caused by the war and the situation around us.
Thank you. Pavel, Czech Republic is not neighboring with Ukraine. Is ČEPS somehow doing things different during the war than it did before?
Well, I'm not completely operational guy, but as far as I know, the situation is I would say, stable and normal. So I do not observe any, say, discrepancies and huge differences for the normal situation. Indeed, we are affected with all the situation in the market. I mean, the prices of the electricity, which we buy for the losses, for example, our ancillary services, indeed. But in principle of N-1 security violation criteria, etc., I think the situation is quite okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Maciej? Poland, neighboring with Ukraine, do you see any differences to what was before the war in managing the grid?
Yes, there is of course a few new issues and development that we have to tackle with. The first thing is of course that UKRENERGO, Ukrainian grid, is now synchronized with the Continental Europe network. And this was a huge achievement, I would like to stress here, and also to express the appreciation for the UKRENERGO colleagues to manage the grid in the times of war, to manage the grid during the isolated mode, and then to prepare and to prepare for this emergency synchronization. That was a huge task made by our colleagues from the operations sections, but for the IT also. But finally it was done because of this joint understanding and common will to connect Ukrainian grid to the Continental European network, to have this kind of cohesion in case of any needs in the future. In Poland, we also, a few months after the synchronization, started the work to refurbish or reconstruction of the connection with Ukraine, and the works are ongoing and should be completed by the end of this year. So yes, indeed, there is a lot of new work, especially on the connection, but also there is a new situation on the market that we are observing, which is affecting also our operations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. David, prices are high. Margin calls are even higher. It's really cash intensive to hedge positions on the exchange. Do you see that the market participants or the participants of the exchange would leave the exchange and would do OTC transactions to avoid margin calls?
Okay, well, first of all, I would say that we are at war at the exchange, because if you look at the prices, you can see spikes that are, I guess, very closely correlated with what's going on in Ukraine. When the war started, there was a first spike, and just before Ukraine made a counter-offensive, there was another spike, record-breaking 1,050 euros per megawatt hour. And of course, these high prices are generating high margins, as you are asking. To answer your question, actually, the truth is opposite. What we see is that the liquidity is concentrating on an exchange, because it's much more complicated for the market participants to trade on bilateral basis, because when you trade on bilateral basis, you have to issue a letter of credit guarantees towards many counterparties, whereas on exchange you have all the positions pooled into one basket. So yes, margins are huge. Obviously, there is not much we can do about that, because the margin calculation is strictly regulated by regulatory authorities. But the settlement mechanism makes sure that everybody gets the energy he purchased and that the seller gets his money.
And are there any discussions to change that mechanism, that calculation, or not?
Obviously, we as an exchange try to find a way how to decrease the burden on market participants as much as we can. But as I said, our possibilities are very limited, and obviously the calculation was based on some mathematics, some logic that didn't change because of the war. So if you want to have the mechanism safe, I don't believe that there is much room that you can do actually with respect to margin calculations. However, what I think what can be done is that the governments could support the market participants, especially the producers, with some help on margins, because the margin, these are just money that you need to make market functioning. It's not money that you pay, that you lose. It's a guarantee for your obligations. And I think there is a fairly good chance that the power producers will really deliver what they promised to deliver. So I think the risk for the governments is not huge, and the governments can help in that respect.
Thank you. Pavel, there is a formula for the price cap of ancillary services in the Czech Republic.
Well, frankly speaking, I'm not expert in market about this formula, so I don't know if I can answer it. So what was the question?
Well, the question is whether, there are discussions across Europe, not just the Czech Republic, about implementing the price cap on the power side of the energy sector. 200 euros is the cap that is discussed. There were two proposals. One is capping the price of gas that is going into the gas power plants. And the other one is capping the price of the other power plants that are not run on gas. It means coal, renewables. And my question was going to be whether ČEPS is thinking to change that price cap formula if such cap is implemented, that 200 euros per megawatt hour.
This is a good question, but I'm sorry, I can't afraid it. A discussion may take in the future for sure, but not currently as far as I know. With all these caps, indeed, we are in difficult situation, which requires maybe some challenging solutions. All the regulation which was done in the past, or the national or European regulations and directives, has been prepared in a situation of peace. And we are not a completely different solution. So as a short-term solution or a mid-term solution, we may discuss different options, but from long-term perspective, the only solution which is from electricity point of view to ensure the balance between demand and generation production. As long as this balance will be, it implies the high prices for sure.
Okay, thank you. Peter, SEPS has a long-term contract for providing ancillary services. There might be a change that some portion of the volumes will be on the day-ahead market. Aren't you afraid that the price of ancillary services in Slovakia will be much larger than it's now and will be close to what is in Czech Republic?
It's actually fair to say that by the end of this year, we will actually enter a period of predictability and certainty in terms of the prices for the ancillary services, because it was actually it's a result of the auction back in 2018, and the frame contracts were for 3 years and then extended to 2022 based on the assumptions and the market conditions in 2018. So I mean, the logical outcome of any thought around about the situation and the future is that there is a big difference on all the markets that are influencing the cost of the balancing services or the system services in the country. The power price is multiplied if you compare it to the 2018, the price of gas, the price of coal, and so on. So yes, what we see and we actually are working with is with the fact. And the fact is that there is a wrong expectation to actually expect the same prices and the same cost for the system operation next year as it was in 2018. That's fair. In terms of the way how we actually are going to procure the reserved capacity, We are in discussion with the other regulator these days, so I don't want to actually share any information before it's public. But what we shared with all the participants is that we will have two streams of procuring the reserved capacity. The first one is the long term, which is up to 1 year frame contracts and the contracts purchase of the reserved capacity, and the rest will be, yes, on the short term. And regulation actually tells us that at least 30% of the reserved capacity needs to be procured on a daily market. So that's what we are preparing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. David, you mentioned I can ask you any question, so I will. I'm wondering why former proposal of capping the price of gas is suddenly not discussed, and new favorite is capping the price of all other power plants. Why do you think is the case?
Well, I think generally every cap on price, you are taking a risk that someone will end up with shortage. For me, capping electricity price is totally nonsense because, in my opinion, you are risking a blackout. Because you can find yourself in a situation where there will be a higher demand than supply, and basically you'll end up in very, very difficult situation. Capping the gas is, I would say, less risky, but still risky. And generally, I also don't like that idea, but maybe it's from these two bad solutions, maybe the better one, because you can store the gas, and if you put a cap on the gas, and then you see that you are draining your supplies quicker than you should, then you can do some action actually about that. So to interfere with the wholesale market, I would say this is very risky. Interfere with the end consumer market that we see currently in Czech Republic, it's also risky because you basically destroy the market for the end consumers, because the supply will concentrate among several players, and there'll be no competition at all. But for the end consumers, this is a doable, because if you have still some portion of the production that is not sold, that is not hedged on a forward basis or future basis, then you can still provide the cost for the end consumers at the production cost or close to production cost, which means in case of Czech Republic, lower prices, then you would normally provide them with if there is a free market. But of course, this is an expense because you are not providing that energy to the mutual European market, and of course, it's on the expense of other member states.
Understood. Andrii, Záporizhzhia nuclear power plant, it's not running. Is it safe?
It's never safe when there are bombs inside the nuclear station. But for now, there is radiation level is normal. Mm-hmm. It is not producing the electricity. The needs of the stations are covered from the grid, from Ukrainian grid, from UKRENERGO grid. And there is diesel generators which are ready to be used in any time. For the last few months, the same situation was maybe 2 or 3 times when the stations go to zero, and then somehow line was broken by Russian militaries, and the diesel generators was started. They show that they can work for some time, but of course the fuel for diesel generators also must be delivered. It's not unlimited. There is no pipeline or something like this for this. So I cannot say the situation is safe, but from perspective of it is still yet manageable, yes, it is still yet manageable. Mm-hmm. And from perspective of the balancing of the energy system of Ukraine without Zaporizhzhia power plant, for now this works, we have enough, but as I said previously, we expect that it came back to the normal operation as soon as possible. I cannot say more.
Okay, and the follow-up question, what is the drop in demand in Ukraine at the moment? You know, number of people fled, you know, businesses are closed. What is the difference in July?
So demand after the war started reduced it up to 35%. So only 65% on the level before the war. And if we will take this 35% as 100%, something like 80% it is industrial and business, which is closed by the reason that they, in this territory, they cannot provide their business. Actually, the territory which is occupied by Russian Federation is industrial territory in Ukraine. So the biggest plants, the industrial, all enterprises, most of them was there, which was consuming the electricity as a base load. So we have lost demand, we have lost the production in the same time, for now, of course temporary, but system is still balanced.
Thank you. We have a question on Slido. I will ask Pavel to answer that question. How the ancillary services would broaden change if large heat pumps, each pump is integrated with existing gas engines?
Well, the world is changing all the time, and we have been, let's say, active in that field in terms of ancillary services. By the way, with Nano, we are a member of this DFlex project, which is organized by the Czech R&D agency. So in terms of this flexibility, we are very active. But at the same time, there are some standard rules defined in the code of the transmission network, which has to be fulfilled. So as long as there will be products which are compatible with these requirements given by the network code for the future and can provide with this quality as other sources, this could be then implemented as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I will ask for the poll. It's there already. I will read it and then I will ask a question to one of our panelists. Should governments use public money to reduce the price of energy? Governments should subsidize energy price. No, governments should provide support only to encourage energy savings. Governments should subsidize energy price to reduce the burden on consumers. And neither. And before we have results of the poll, I will ask a question to Maciej. Poland, demand response, aggregation. It seems that there are some plans to implement it, but there is still enough time to make a change. Would you describe us the situation in Poland? What is the thinking about using industrial production, small power plants for providing ancillary services?
So this is the developing market with quite a huge potential, but it's still on the, let's say, initial phase of its development. We as a TSO, we have of course some contracts with the demand side responses, and it's developing, it's increasing year, but it's still, let's say, not so much as we could expect. So looking at this from the broader picture, we can see that yes, of course, this is something that it's somewhere has in place somewhere in the future in the power market, which will be based more or most on renewables. But I think it will still have to wait some years that this situation will come, because as we saw for the last years, there is not so much speed of the development.
And do you feel pressure from European Commission to make a change?
From the European Commission, not so much. There is of course some companies that are entering to the market and offering this kind of services and expecting from us to be, let's say, more active in this domain. We of course respond to them, and we are talking. But as I said, yeah, this is something that it's should wait a little bit for a broader usage.
Okay, thank you. We have results of the poll. Most participants think that governments should provide only support and encourage energy savings. So subsidies shouldn't be used that much. My next question will go to Slovakia, to Peter. It will be similar to what I asked Maciej. There seems to be changes in Slovakia in terms of aggregation. Would you share with us what are the planned changes, whatever you can share, not necessarily what you discuss with the regulator and it's not public, but what is it that you can share already?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to actually share with you that our team has been working very intensively on enlarging the pool of the participants that could actually participate on the balancing of the system in the future. If we look at what's going to happen in next year, and it's coming back to your question about what we are preparing or how we actually working to secure the reserved capacity, we made the changes in the certification process and also the conditions for the participants to participate in our tenders by lowering the installed capacity of the sources and resources. So what my colleague from PSC was talking about, we really are tapping in to the segment of the smaller production or generators to be able to actually compete and provide the reserved capacity for us. I believe that based on the changes in our conditions, we are also welcoming the integrated aggregators to join the club very soon. But our ultimate goal is by 2024, if I come back to the initial keynote, to really enable the rest of the market participants to participate on the flexibility of the system. So next year, the integrated aggregators, and then in 24 to really open it to the prosumers, the energy communities, and the other players.
So it means that you are thinking to introduce independent aggregation in Slovakia from 2024?
And as it was mentioned in the keynote, it's a really combination not only of what the regulation allows and what the TSOs wants to do, but it's also coming to the point of the digitalization and the IT systems readiness to address and to share the information and the data that are needed in order to secure the balance of the system. So as you already standard knows, and I believe that most of the viewers, SEPS, along with the DSOs and with our Nano Octet, are working on the energy data center project to really prepare and build a platform for sharing the information and the integration of all the players and the participants on the market. So yes, the answer is yes. Our deadline or the deadline of the project of the EDC is mid-24.
Thank you. Pavel, I have to ask you the same question. Independent aggregation in the Czech Republic, what is the deadline?
Well, as far as I know, that there are some requirements given by the regulation and by the European law, and we are working on that. But it's also subject to some, I would say, law requirements. And I don't know the exact line. If you ask me, I can answer you. But we are definitely hardly working on that also.
Okay, thank you. Andrii, once the war finishes, and hopefully it will be as soon as possible, what will be the first thing UKRENERGO will have to do to put the grid into the state when it was before?
You know, after maybe the first months when the war started, we started to think a little bit a different way. We don't put nothing on the after the war. So we are working each day and get used to manage the war situation as one of the parameters which we are living with for now. And that's why everything that you discussed is actually it's close to our market, the situation. It's close actually with our demand response. We are even in this situation starting the first project with this, etc., etc. Now we are aimed to start the common auctions for allocation capacity for interconnection. It is one of the critical issues that should be solved, and we hope it will be managed as soon as possible, because during the plan it was something where in the middle 2023, but the war speeding up us. So I don't want to put some dates for now because it's under discussion with Java, etc. But we are working on this as one of the priorities for today. As for the next steps, and which is more important, I believe, in this winter for all the European countries, not for only Ukraine, because all the European countries are facing with the war with the Russian Federation. Just we have the hot war, but the whole Europe has a energy war with the Russian Federation. Ukraine has a significant surplus of established capacity, and in the same time when we have the lost some consumption, and to develop the interconnection with our neighbors and with Nemyrovskyi, for us it's the most priority for now, because we can substitute a lot of the quantity of the gas which is provided. The next thing is to work on the reserves sharing part. So we have a lot of hydropower plants. We have coal thermal power plants which is can provide technically the ancillary services also. So we must work on this level to reduce the dependency of our neighbors, at least from consuming the Russian gas. And for this, we must provide the capacity of interconnection as much as it's possible, just as much as possible, and soon as it's possible. Thank you.
So, do I understand correctly that you are already thinking, implementing aggregation in Ukraine?
We have actually, before the war started, one of our big consumers started the procurement procedures for just small IT parts, small IT stuff, and to start first demand response on AFRR, I believe something like 60 megawatts. It should be the first project, but it's now on occupied territory. This stopped, and now we starting the new pilot with another big consumer, also industrial, but it will be smaller part. It will be 10 megawatts, I believe, something like this. I hope to start this first testing maybe in a few weeks from today. So this idea was developed in UKRENERGO maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I came there, and it was obvious because when in 2014 Russian Federation occupied the eastern part of Ukraine with all anthracite coal and without any logistic to substitute it, there was raised the issue how to manage the ancillary services, and then was the first part, and legislation was adopted for to get the consumer to ancillary service market, an actually balanced market.
Thank you. We have a question on Slido, and I will rephrase it. UKRENERGO is exporting, or Ukraine is exporting power due to the drop of in demand. Is there actually anything that you need from neighboring TSOs? Do you actively use the help of neighboring TSOs to manage the grid, or not so much?
I would rephrase the answer. I believe that we have a lot of mutual interests. So it's not that our neighbors should or must or somehow else to support UKRENERGO in some. It is, from our perspective, it's a mutual two-way street. And of course there is, based on this extremely sudden synchronization, there is few bottlenecks which we see on our neighbor's grid, but we work on it in a normal way. But as I said previously, the most important for both of us, for all of us, is that to make everything is possible, and our emergency synchronization process shows that it's possible, everything is possible, is to combine Ukrainian power system even as soon as possible, that this winter Ukraine can support, to maximize Ukrainian possible support for consumers in Europe by our power.
Thank you. David, public institutions go to PXE to buy power or gas. So you've been running auctions for some time. Given that the number of market or number of suppliers is lower than it was before, and the risks associated with that obviously lead to that not everybody wants to participate in auctions. Do you see drop in liquidity in those auctions? Is it possible to buy power on PXE auctions?
Yes, excuse me. It is possible actually. The problem is that municipalities sometimes want to have conditions that are basically not possible to get in current world. So typically what we hear is that they would like to have unlimited capability in adding some new consumption point and so on. In the market that we see now, this is simply impossible. So if the municipality can accept the rules and accept the reality of the prevailing market situation, then they can actually auction the electricity and they can get the supplier. Obviously now in Czech Republic, yesterday government announced a new solution for municipalities, so we will see how this is going to work out. But until today it was possible. And maybe if I may, just to express, for me this is a strange debate because, instead of debating, how we can support Ukraine, we hear how Ukraine can support Europe, so that's for me, very interesting to hear.
And my next question will be for each of you, and I will start with Peter. What is the single most worrying thing that you have in your head for the next few months, for the winter?
Before I answer, because I think this is my last chance to actually contribute to the discussion, I want to thank you, all the TSOs sitting around the table, for the partnership and cooperation in the last months, starting with the ČEPS, continuing PSE, and kudos to UKRENERGO, Andrii and Volodya and the team. It's really interesting times for all of us to really share all the challenges and the questions that are emerging, but to see the ability to work together is really something that encourages me. Also, in the context of the question I got, Stanislav, from you. So I'm not worrying about the ability to cooperate and partner. What I think that, and it's not only the question to SEPS, but everybody on the market, from the consumers through the industry players using electricity and the gas in their production, all the way through the hospitals and the municipalities, is to get a signal, but also a situation where the things get back to the stable. And I understand it's a wishful thinking in the middle of what we're talking about, but basically if we compare what is happening on the market with the electricity and the gas to the stock exchange or the financial markets, we're in the middle of the crisis based on the emotions and the uncertainties. So a bit of stability would actually help to address the questions and the challenges that we have.
Thank you. Maciej?
This is proverb, yes, it's good to live in the interesting times. I think it's too much interesting times we live in, and we would really now dreaming of living in boring times, yeah? But unfortunately, probably it won't happen soon. But what I want to also refer maybe to the question about the support for UKRENERGO, and I think a lot of our colleagues from not only neighboring TSOs but also from ELIA or RTE, we were supporting in measures that we could provide with. Yes, so this was all support of the elements of the construction of the lines or some elements of the substations, and we're still doing that. And this is our let's say piece to to the elements to bring, let's say, stability to the Ukrainian system. But at the other hand, we also, of course, understand that there is this kind of discussions and the will from the Ukrainian side to increase this trade with continental Europe. But we should always remember, yes, that the grid stability and the security is something which is utmost importance, especially the frequency control, and we have to monitor and observe the situation how it is in our interconnected already system, and unless all the measures from the catalog of measures are implemented, then I think it will be also kind of the contribution if we can increase the trade of Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. David?
For me, the biggest nightmare is that Europe would not be unified. The disintegration of the markets, disintegration of political opinions. I think EU must stay integrated, support Ukraine, and have a one European market.
Thank you. Pavel?
Well, before answering that, I would also shortly react on what was shown on the question on the screen. Well, actually, this is whether question who helps each other, whether Ukraine to us or Europe to Ukraine. This is actually how the electricity network works. You know, once they are connected, they mutually helps each other because the frequency is the parameter connected. So we are helping each other. And also true is that Ukraine is currently not exporting electricity. So the question is how to export it with the lines, which are somehow pipes. And coming to your question, well, I would say somehow optimistic because Czech transmission or electricity network or system is robust from the very past, and still a net exporting country. So we have still somehow electricity. So from that perspective, I'm optimistic. Indeed, from personal point of view, there are fears about the prices of the electricity and indeed of the war spreading potential. Hope not. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. And Andrii, I would ask you two questions, not only the worrying, but also the other one. What is the most positive thought that you have for the coming months?
As for the boring part, as Maciej say, it would be great to see these boring times. For us, these months will be very unboring because of the fuel, because of the capacity, because of the consumption, because of the lines, because of everything. Everything can be changed in just like that. But as for the, which is motivating and which is good, I hope, next month, is few things. As what is Maciej says that we expect up to end of the year is to renew the old line which was unplugged for 30 years almost. It was also make us together closer, and actually I hope that all necessary processes which is now a little bit different in Ukraine instead of the European, actually it's not a lot of them already, but it's still some, also will be 100% in line with the European legislation. And the Ukrainian energy market will be 100% in line with this. And of course, I expect that our war will finish with our win in hope that as nearest future. It settled a lot of the issues.
Thank you. Thank you all, gentlemen, for participating in the panel discussion. Especially thank you to Andrii that you could come over to Prague. I will ask some of the similar questions to the next panelists. So if you have time, watch the next panel. It will be interesting to see the different opinions on the same topics.